This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Another day, another weird controversy, and this has been one of the weirder off seasons that I've had, because I thought that most Browns fans, or at least the Browns media in general, would be excited after you go 11-6 with 26% of your team on IR. But somehow the Browns accomplished that, and people are doing the doom and gloom thing. And this has been the newest in the doom and gloom too. Let's talk about it. This is Albert Breer on local Boston sports talk radio, by the way, local Boston sports talk radio or television. So that's an important piece of context to make sure you don't miss. Talking about the Patriots hiring Alex Van Pelt. Keep in mind, Albert Breer is a Boston guy and is a known defender of the Patriots organization.
Don't know it, right? I think there's the one key here that people will miss if they don't know it, right? So in Cleveland, the reason he was let go in Cleveland was because ownership and Paul DePodesta, not Kevin Stefanski, ownership and Paul DePodesta were frustrated with the progress Deshaun Watson had made. I don't think that they really, truly, the people who made that decision really, truly knew his value to that staff. And the people, other people on that.
Let's talk about this first before we get to the whole glue guy stuff. The reason Alex Van Pelt was fired. Now, I will tell you with absolute 100% certainty that there is no one single truth to why Alex Van Pelt was fired. I have heard things similar to what Albert Breer has said. I have also heard things that suggest that that was not even close to the truth. And honestly, when I've pressed to ask why people believe that that is the case, that the organization above Kevin Stefanski made that fire, I am not convinced with the explanations that I get that would make me think that what Albert Breer is saying is 100% true. I do not believe it. I do believe it might be Alex Van Pelt's side of the story, or at least what Alex Van Pelt is telling people. I think there's a chance of that, but there is no definitive what happened behind the scenes of this. So to speak so definitively of that is kind of wild to me. And given that this is, Albert Breer, Boston guy, talking on Boston Sports Talk, I feel like this is Alex Van Pelt's version of the story, but that really doesn't line up, right? Because Alex Van Pelt was asked to change his role. That's what the official story was. And then he decided to resign. Albert Breer sounded like the DePodesta just came down and fired him, which that's not how that story came out or happened, or even how Alex Van Pelt talked to reporters about how that story happened. So I find reason to have significant doubt with this side of the story. If I thought it was true, sure. But also, let's even just engage, right? I don't think that what Albert Breer said about how that decision got made is true. But let's engage with even if it's true. Okay, if it's true that the Browns wanted to move on from Alex Van Pelt because they weren't happy with the progress that Deshaun Watson is making, well, how is that unfair? Even if that's true, how is that an unfair reasoning? Were we all not kind of disappointed with what we've seen out of Deshaun Watson? Were we all thinking that the Browns need to go in a different direction with Deshaun Watson after what we've seen this year? Raise your hand if you felt like, nah, man, they had it right. Like, I don't think any of us thought that. Everybody thought that the offense needed tweaks. From me to Jake Burns, to a lot of people who are knowledgeable about this situation. We all looked at this and said, man, it's kind of weird that Joe Flacco walks in and the offense looks perfectly fine with him, but with Deshaun Watson, it looks like it doesn't look like it's shifting correctly. Like, it doesn't look like it's comfortable for either party. So if that were the case, if Alex Van Pelt got fired because ownership and DePodesta weren't happy with the progress that Deshaun Watson has made, given what I see in the comments section, 90% of the time, Deshaun Watson has brought up, and rightfully so, what's the problem? Even if that's true. Now, again, I tend to think that Kevin Stefanski made this decision. Or at least Kevin Stefanski made this decision after having a self-evaluation conversation with Andrew Berry and DePodesta, and maybe ownership was involved in that as well. But they came out of that meeting saying, we got to do something different on offense. We got to make this offense more comfortable for the quarterback that we have, because the quarterback that we have is clearly not comfortable in this offense. Now, you might be able to argue that it's because he hasn't played that much. And I think there's some validity to the argument that Deshaun Watson wasn't comfortable in the offense simply because he's played 11 games in the offense. Like, he just hasn't been comfortable. He hasn't been in the offense long enough, consecutively enough. He's only played, this year he didn't play more than 3 games in a row. Not enough time to be comfortable in the offense. But I also said that, hey, in this offense, I feel like Deshaun Watson's always going to be limited. Even when I was giving the benefit of the doubt, I always felt like that way about what Deshaun Watson's ceiling would be in this offense, because it's asking him to do stuff that he's not comfortable doing. It's asking him to be on time. It's asking him to think short then long. That's not the quarterback you traded for. So if that's the case, you got to make some adjustments. So what's the criticism here? That the Browns made a move that makes sense that they should make? Albert Breer has said nothing positive about Deshaun Watson over the last couple of years. Rightfully so. So how can you say that move, that's a bad move? Now, let's get into why he's going to justify this because of Alex Van Pelt's value to the organization.
I don't think that they really, truly, the people who made that decision really, truly knew his value to that staff. And other people on that staff, not so much Kevin, but people below him, were floored when they fired him for 2 reasons. Number one, how do you fire the offensive coordinator after you just won 11 games with 4 different quarterbacks, with your 4th and 5th tackles, without Nick Chubb,
including at least 2 or 3 of those guys that nobody's ever heard of, right? I mean, you're talking about Jeff Driscoll, PJ Walker, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Like, those are some of the guys he was working with.
So you just went through that, right? He was able to help build an offense that was able to sustain with Joe Flacco coming off the couch, with their 4th and 5th tackles, without Nick Chubb.
Stop the cap. Stop it. Stop it. The Browns did not get through that year because of the offense. The Browns got through this year at 11-6 in spite of the offense, even when Joe Flacco was in there. Right? Again, we talk about stuff as so offensive oriented that the Browns can get 11-6 with the number 1 ranked defense in the NFL and like the number 30th ranked offense, and we still making this shit about the offense, about how the Browns got to 11-6. We still making it about the offense. That's crazy to me. That's absolutely crazy to me. It's the defense. Alex Van Pelt was in charge of an offense that struggled. The offense struggled for pretty good reasons. You did not have a starting quarterback for most of the year. You were down to DTR. You were down to Joe Flacco. You were down to Philip PJ Walker. And the offense was what the offense was. But other areas in which Alex Van Pelt was in charge with were also disappointing. The run game, very disappointing, especially at the end of the season. We talk about the Browns' inability to make adjustments on the offensive side of the ball. That's Alex Van Pelt's job on game day, right? Kevin calls the plays. Alex is going to be part of making that adjustment. Now, does Kevin have some responsibility of that? Yeah. And that's why he has a different offensive coordinator now. Alex was probably his guy. He was his guy he brought in here. He had to move off of him because, well, the offense just didn't work. And again, even when Deshaun was in there, and I know y'all guys weren't out here acting like the offense was great with Deshaun in here, even though the offense wasn't terrible, it still wasn't what you expected. You didn't get any of those 300-yard games that you wanted from Deshaun Watson. We didn't get any of those 3-touchdown games. Like, it was under expectation. You were playing winning football. And I think if you would have rolled it out here with Alex Van Pelt and Deshaun Watson again, you would be playing winning football. But I go back to the Stump Mitchell interview as to why the Browns had to move on from Alex Van Pelt and a lot of guys in the building. Because in Stump Mitchell's interview, he went out of his way to make the point that he thinks the Browns should use Deshaun Watson the exact same way that they used Joe Flacco. Go back and watch the interview. Shout out to Cam Justice. She did a great job on that. Friend of the show. But go back and watch that interview. That's a part of it. Stump Mitchell says, I think we should use Deshaun Watson just like we used Joseph Flacco. It's not a coincidence that he got fired when Alex Van Pelt got fired. I'm not saying that Alex Van Pelt thought the exact same thing, but I do think that they felt like Deshaun Watson should fit in this offense and that they shouldn't make that many changes. And that's why they had to move on from Alex. So again, I ask here, if that's the case, what's the problem? Because none of us, me, you, people informed about the situation, thought the solution. Some of us might have thought the solution was, but none of us thought a good solution for the Browns quarterback situation would be to use Deshaun Watson just like Joe Flacco. Because anybody with eyes can see that they play quarterback completely differently. They're not the same type of quarterback at all. Doing that would be being so stubborn that you're going to make a bad investment worse. It's going to make a trade that you have not seen the returns you wanted to see from already worse because you want to be stubborn about the offense that you have in here. It's the exact thing I warned the Browns against at the end of the season, because it would have been real easy to take the success with Joe Flacco and learn the wrong lesson from it, right? Let's force Deshaun in this offense. We're going to run our offense because it worked kind of with Joe Flacco. That would have been the wrong lesson, because then you would have had another mismatchy year. At least right now, they're attempting to make a solution to the problem. But again, let's continue.
Kareem Hunt coming back in. So there's that. Like, that I think is one reason why people there were floored that he got fired. The other one I think is the real key, though. He was the glue of that staff. Kevin, if you know him, he's a great guy. He's not the most outgoing guy. You know, he's just sort of like his personality is very dry. He's got a good sense of humor, but he's not like this outwardly gregarious guy. Alex was the one that held that staff together. When guys were coming out, when guys were going in, he is a guy who was a unifying force in that building. And after the year the Patriots just came off of, I think at one point the idea was somebody like Van Pelt as a senior offensive assistant, and then a younger play caller underneath him. Not underneath him, but like the younger play caller with the senior offensive assistant backstopping him.
All right, man. Alex Van Pelt was super important to the Browns coaching staff because of the vibes. We back on vibes. Vibes are important, right? Vibes are important. I always talk about this. You need a coaching staff that knows how to make sure that people want to come to work. And maybe Alex Van Pelt was good at that. But I'm not going to sit here and act like vibes alone are enough to justify a offensive coordinator keeping their job. A, vibes alone might be good for the defensive line coach or the running back coach or the quality control coach. The offensive coordinator's best trait, Albert Breer, cannot be that he has good vibes. I'm sorry. No, absolutely not. If that, you know how much that would make me terrified if we hired like Jim Schwartz and they were like, yeah, man, you know what he brings to the table? Good vibes. Not like a good 5-wide defense. Not like a fact that he's developed defensive linemen before. No. The best thing you could fix your mouth to say about Alex Van Pelt. And look, Alex Van Pelt is not a terrible coach. I don't want to make that impression. He's not a terrible coach. But when you're justifying this being a great hire because his vibes are excellent, that sounds like a red flag to me. Now, let's go back to Alex Van Pelt's history. He was an offensive coordinator in Buffalo before I think they were ranked like 27th in the NFL that year. And then he was a quarterback's coach and a running back's coach and a quarterback's coach after that. He left Cincinnati in 2018, 2019. I remember from my people in Cincinnati, didn't hear like much of anything either way about him. They were just like, okay, yeah, cool. He's your offensive coordinator now. And he's been the Browns' offensive coordinator and quarterback's coach. And I understand Alex Van Pelt is a good vibe. So is Deuce Staley. They hired Deuce Staley. They hired a bunch of former players on the coach's staff. I don't think the Browns are going to be remiss because they don't have the excellent vibes of Alex Van Pelt, especially when it seems extremely justifiable why they moved on from it. Now, look, if you're saying, well, Alex is just the offensive coordinator, Kevin is in charge of the offense, shouldn't he be held more responsible? Okay, maybe that's a good point, but fact is that Kevin's the head coach. He's not going to go before the coordinator goes. And honestly, Kevin's job was more than just the offense. It was also keeping the locker room together, and he did an excellent job in doing that on both sides of the ball. Alex Van Pelt might have assisted because, again, as we've heard, he's an excellent vibes guy. But Alex Van Pelt is also not up for his second Assistant of the Year award, where Kevin Stefanski is up for the second Coach of the Year award. So, you know, just wild things. I think sometimes Alex Van Pelt just becomes whoever somebody wants him to become, because I saw a lot of this when people were talking about Kevin's play calling and they would use like the playoff game as an example of Alex should be calling the plays, despite the fact that Alex Van Pelt doesn't have the greatest track record as a play caller. And it's because like, oh, well, he's such a great play caller. And it's like, is Alex Van Pelt a great play caller, or do you want him to be a great play caller because you don't want Kevin to call the plays? I think Alex Van Pelt usually ends up becoming whatever is convenient for whatever argument somebody wants to make for Alex Van Pelt to be. Right? If you are a Patriots fan, it's convenient to say that he got fired unjustifiably because they want to fix Deshaun Watson and they didn't think he did a good job at it, and just roll with that. But his vibes are excellent. Whereas if you're a Browns fan and you don't like Kevin, it's easy to say that, oh, well, you know, Alex was in charge of all the things that I like about the Browns and Kevin was in charge about all the things that I don't like. At the end of the day, they made a move. We all thought that changes need to be made on the offensive side of the ball, especially if you're going to continue to roll with Watson. And they made those changes. Nothing here is surprising. The reactions to it is, though. Like, I thought that we were pretty sure that these things would be done, right? We were pretty sure that they were going to commit to Deshaun Watson going forward and that they were going to try to make this work with Deshaun Watson. But that's my thoughts on this whole thing. I think it's silly, but let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.